Hey everyone, welcome back to a new Rocketblocks mock interview. Today we've got a brand new case titled Main Street Decision. In this case, your client is an aspiring entrepreneur, Michelle Johnson, who wants the candidate's input to decide between opening an ice cream parlor or a bookstore. The key here is that Michelle wants to know which would be more profitable and enjoyable in the long run. And joining us today is Abigail Doekson, who'll be playing the interviewer. Abby is an ex-BCG consultant and is currently completing her MBA from the Yale School of Management. Our candidate for today is Ashwin Shetty. He is an ex-Bain and Company manager and ex-Deloitte director. So, without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abby. I spent 2 years working at the Boston Consulting Group Seattle office, and then spent a couple of years working in private equity in New York at a company called Astorg, where I was on their software investment team. And presently, I am a MBA candidate at Yale SOM. And I'll turn it over to Ashwin to introduce himself as well.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Abby. I'm Ashwin, a former Deloitte director and a former Bain manager. I'll be playing the role of an interviewee today. I'm excited to do a case with you, Abby.
Likewise, very excited. So with that, I believe we can just kick off the case. The case we have today is about your friend, Michelle Jones, who is an aspiring entrepreneur and is excited to open a new business on the main street of her small town. She has $300,000 to invest and is considering opening either an ice cream parlor or a bookstore. However, she is unsure which business would be more successful and enjoyable to run. Michelle is asking for your help to decide which option to pursue. So how would you help her make this decision?
Got it. Thanks. Thanks a lot, Abby, for that interesting case. A lot of my friends keep asking for advice on which business to invest. So I think this is a good case in that line of thinking. So let me recap the key case facts for you before I take some time to organize my thoughts and formulate a structure. So Michelle, an aspiring entrepreneur with 300K, is seeking our help in choosing between opening an ice cream parlor or a bookstore on her town's main street. What you've also told me is that she, apart from the financial considerations, also has some non-financial considerations, which is she wants this business to be enjoyable to run. Have I got that right, Abby?
Yes, that is correct. She's looking for a business that will both, she can earn a profit on her investment, as well as this will be fun for her to do. It will be enjoyable, not super stressful, business venture for her.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. So I think that those are two key non-financial considerations for me: enjoyable to run and less stress, right? Before I take some time, Abby, to formulate my structure, would love your help to clarify certain questions I have, right? The first question that I have is, what is Michelle's overall objective? I mean, you've already given me some detail in terms of non-financial considerations. Is there any other objective that I need to be aware of?
Great question. I think Michelle's definitely looking to turn a profit so that she does get a return on her investment. More returns are preferred than less returns. However, as we just discussed, her objective is not purely financial. She also values personal satisfaction and wants a business that's enjoyable and not overwhelmingly stressful for her.
Got it. Great. Thanks. Thanks a lot, Abby. Now, because I'm advising Michelle as a friend, I would love to understand what's her, let's say, professional background. Does she have any experience in either of the two businesses, ice cream parlor, or bookstore?
Great question. So Michelle is a former management consultant who recently left the industry. And after her successful career, she's excited to sort of be her own boss and do her own thing. Part of the reason why she's looking for low stress as well. It's this kind of exciting venture post a super successful career. She does not have experience in either of the businesses. However, in college, she did work in the service industry as a part-time job.
Got it. Got it. And does she have any interest in, let's say, literature or these kind of topics? Because bookstore business is on her mind. Does she have any certain affinity towards that?
Yeah, she studied literature in college. That was her major, was an English literature major.
Got it. Great. Thanks. Thanks a lot for that. And finally, the third clarifying question that I have, Abby, is what is the demographic makeup and geography of this town? So what I mean by that is, does it get very hot in the summer in this particular town? Also, from a demographic makeup, I'm trying to understand, is it a college crowd here, or or is the town composed of more families?
Yeah, great question. So it's in terms of demographics, the town is diversified in terms of people. So they have, college students who might be around for more of the traditional school year timeframe, as well as they have tourists, local residents such as families, retirees, etc. So well diversified, but it is a mix of college students and then local residents. The geography of the town. So the town experiences both winter and summer temperatures. It experiences summer highs of 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius, and then winter lows around 40 to 50 Fahrenheit or 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. So they do get varying temperatures or seasons.
Yeah, that's helpful. So, I mean, which means there are certain number of summer months where demand for ice cream might be high, right? Great. Abby, if you allow me a couple of minutes, I would like to organize my thoughts and develop a structure for this particular problem that you've given me.
Yes, definitely. Sounds great.
Thank you. Hi, Abby. I'm ready to take you through my structure.
Sounds great. Excited to hear it.
Yeah, thank you. So let me articulate the core question first. Right. So Michelle has 300K to invest and is considering two businesses, a bookshop and an ice cream parlor. Right. Now, to make an informed decision, I think we need to analyze these two options from both financial and non-financial perspectives. Let me start with the financial perspective, right? So in order to determine which option is more financially attractive, I think we need to look at potential revenue, potential cost, and the investment payback period to recoup the initial setup cost of 300K, right? So here, I think the business with the least payback period will be more financially attractive, right? So whichever of the two options has the least payback period, I think will be more financially attractive. Now, from potential revenue perspective, I think first we'll have to look at or analyze key revenue drivers, right? Key revenue drivers would be one, town demographics. Now, bookshop will thrive in areas with higher college student populations. Ice cream parlors would thrive in areas where there are more families, right? So it'll be interesting to evaluate which demographic is higher. Second is competition, right? Are there existing ice cream parlors? Are there existing bookshops? Because that will impact the share of the market we can capture. The third I've written down is the town's weather, because you've already given me information that there are enough summer months. So I think from that perspective, I think ice cream sales would be good because the town has enough summer months. Now, the key cost drivers, I think, for evaluating these two options would be first, cost of goods sold, right? Now, my hypothesis from a cost of goods sold perspective would be that it'll be higher for a bookshop because of the royalties paid to publishers and authors. My hypothesis is that if you look at the value distribution, more value is getting distributed to publishers and authors. So therefore, I think the COGS will be higher for a bookshop relative to ice cream store. Then I think the second cost driver will be the rental cost. Again, I think a bookshop will require more space, so therefore it will be higher for a bookshop. Third, I've written down utilities. For utilities, I think in case of ice cream parlor, the utility cost will be higher because of the refrigeration requirements. Fourth, what I have is labor cost. Now, I think my hypothesis would be for ice cream parlor, the labor cost would be higher, just because they might need more people to operate the ice cream parlor due to higher foot traffic. Now, there could be other cost drivers, which I will analyze as we further drill down with regard to the financial assessment. The third pillar that I have is the investment payback period, right? Once we compute the operating revenue and the operating cost, we can get the operating profit. And then if I divide the initial investment cost, which is 300K, by the operating profit, we can determine how long each business takes to recoup the investment. And as I said at the beginning, the business with the least payback period should be more financially attractive. Now, beyond the financial considerations, Michelle has articulated two key financial non-objectives, two key non-financial objectives, which is she wants a business which is enjoyable to run, and she wants it to be low stress. Now, to determine which business best aligns with these aspirations, I think we need to delve deeper into each objective. So let me start with enjoyment first, right? So in my view, I think there are two subcategories we need to look at here. In order for the business to be enjoyable, first, it should align with the interests and passions of Michelle, right? You've given me information that Michelle enjoys literature. So perhaps bookshop might align more in terms of interests and passion for Michelle. I think ice cream parlor will be more suitable if, let's say, Michelle enjoys making people happy with sweet treats. For example, my mom finds great joy in preparing delicious sweets and sharing them with others, right? But based on what I know, Michelle enjoys literature, and therefore I think a bookshop might be more suitable in terms of interest and passion alignment. Second, I think is customer interaction, right? Looking at Michelle's background, she's a former management consultant. I mean, my hypothesis would be she's somebody who is an intellectual. So therefore, a bookshop would provide her deep conversations with book lovers, promote intellectual engagement. I think that would be more suitable to Michelle. While in the case of an ice cream parlor, she will enjoy that more if she likes more fast-paced interactions. Based on what you've told me, I would lean more towards her preferring bookshop in terms of customer interaction, right? So from an alignment with interest and passion perspective and customer interaction perspective, I think bookshop, at least for now, seems more aligned. Let's look at the stress level. I think from a stress level perspective, the way I would like to look at it from two subcategories, right? One, what I've written down is operational workload, right? So which of these two businesses is more demanding from an operational perspective, right? Second, what I've written down is seasonality. Now we'll have to look at how cyclicality or seasonality impacts the business of these two options, right? So the more seasonal the business is, I believe, there will be more potential spikes, and therefore it might become more operationally demanding, right? But I think we'll have to further analyze from an operational workload perspective and from a seasonality perspective, which business would be more suitable for Michelle. And by carefully evaluating these factors, I think Michelle can make an informed decision, or rather, we would help Michelle to make an informed decision in terms of which business would align more to her financial goals as well as her non-financial objectives. Right. So if you're okay with this structure, I would really like to start with the financial assessment of these two businesses, Abby.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Really liked you addressed both case questions here. I think you get to a good answer with that framework, and it makes sense to start with financials. So happy to start there as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So when we think about financials, wondering if we could just start by estimating the gross margins for each of the stores on an annual basis. I do have some data here for you from a market study we received for each of the stores. So if we think about an ice cream shop, we know that an average order size is about $15, and the cost of materials or COGS is about $5 for that each ice cream shop order. And then for a bookstore, we know that an average book sells for about $30 retail, and then the wholesale cost of the book or the COGS is about $15 per book. So given that information, would love for you to estimate sort of a range of gross margins for each of the opportunities.
Got it. Great. So Abhi, just to confirm the information that you've provided me, what you've told me is the order value for ice cream parlor is $15. the gross margin tends to be $10. For bookstore, it's $30 per order, and gross margin is $15, right? And you want me to calculate the annual gross margin for these two businesses, right?
Yes.
Now, let me start with taking some assumptions, because I think we need to take some assumptions in terms of number of customers per day or foot traffic per day. All right. And let me take let's say a kind of an assumption where I'm saying that an ice cream parlor receives 100 customers per day or 100 orders per day, right? Now 100 orders per day with a $10 gross margin per order translates to a daily gross margin of around $1,000, right? Now, let's assume ice cream shop is open for 365 days a year. So that's an annual gross margin of around 365K. Now here, because I'm taking assumptions, I think it's good to do a bit of scenario analysis and talk about and take some variance here, right? So if I take a plus or minus 25% variance, right? And if I take minus 25% of 365K, right? So that's around, I think, so 10% is 36.5. So 20% will be around 73, and that gives me around 270K is 25% less than 365K. And if I look at the 25% plus variance, that's around 365 into 25% of that, which gives me around 450K, right? So what I'm saying is that the plus or minus 25% variance would be 270K to 450K, right? So this business, which is ice cream parlor business, on an annual basis might be making a gross margin of, let's say, 270K to 450K. Now let me do a similar calculation for the bookstore business, right? Now, in terms of foot traffic, I assumed for ice cream business around 100 customers. It will be lower for bookstore because in my experience, the number of people entering a bookstore would be lesser than number of people wanting to have an ice cream, right? Um, Let me take an assumption that number of orders per day in a bookstore might be, let's say, 30 to 40% less. So let's assume 60 customers per day or 60 orders per day for a bookstore. And you've given me $15 is the gross margin per order. So 60 into 15 gives me a daily gross margin of $900. On an annualized basis, that translates into 900 into 365, right? If I just simplify this, it's close to 10% less than 365K, which, and if I just round it a bit, I think it will be close to 330K, right? Now let me run the same variance analysis, which I ran with ice cream parlor business. That's a plus or minus 25% variance. So if I take how much is 25% less of 330K, so that comes to 330K into 25%. That comes to around 250K. And if I look at how much is 25% addition to 330K, that comes to 410K, right? So for a bookstore business, the plus or minus 25% variance in gross margin, right, is 250K to 410K, right? There seems to be a lot of overlap in terms of the gross margin range that I've taken between ice cream parlor business and the bookstore business. It would be interesting to see how does it change when we consider the other cost elements, that is the G&A cost items.
Yes, that's a perfect place to go next, and great job on the calculations here. Quickly, before we move on to G&A items, can you just calculate the gross margin percentage for ice cream shops and bookstores quickly?
Yeah, that's sure. I can do that, Abby. You told me gross margin for ice cream is $10 on a $15 order, right? So that's 10 by 15. So that translates to around 66% gross margin, right? For bookstore, it's $15 gross margin on a $30 order. That's 50%. So that's 50% gross margin, right? So the ice cream parlor business has higher gross margin compared to a bookstore business. And that's not surprising because in my initial structure, I'd hypothesized that the costs or the cost of goods sold for bookstore business might be higher because more value getting distributed to publishers and authors. While in the case of ice cream business, the COGS is primarily the cost of ingredients, which would be relatively lesser compared to the COGS in a bookstore business.
Yeah, that makes sense, and great job getting that so quickly. Moving on to where you want to go next with G&A, we did get a couple data points. We know that a bookstore rents for an average of $8,000 per month, and then an ice cream shop, which can be a little bit smaller of a space, rents for $3,000 a month. So given these two data points, can you estimate maybe what's remaining in G&A or SG&A costs, and then calculate the net profit or operating profit for both businesses?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot, Abby, for that information. Just to repeat what you just said, you've told me the monthly rent for a bookstore business would be around 8K, and for an ice cream parlor business would be 3K, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, thanks. Now, from a G&A cost perspective, I think we will need to look at primarily three items. One is the labor cost. The second is the rental cost, for which we have information. And the third is the utilities, right? Now, let me take some assumptions to compute the labor as well as the utilities cost. From a labor cost perspective, considering in ice cream parlor business, we are saying there will be more foot traffic. And I've assumed 100 customers per day. I think we will need at least 2 people in the ice cream shop to manage this foot traffic. And let me assume, because this town is in the main street, so let me assume an hourly wage of, let's say, $20 per hour, right? So 2 employees, $20 per hour, working, let's say, 10 hours per day, right? Now, and then of course, they're working for almost 365 days, right? So $20 into 2 employees working 10 hours per day. Yeah, so this gives me a total labor cost of close to 150K, right? Now, let me do the same or take the same assumptions for the bookstore business, right? Bookstore business, hourly wage, I'll assume it's similar to what we have in the ice cream parlor, that is $20 per hour. We've assumed 60 customers coming to a bookstore. So let's assume 1 employee can manage 60 customers. And again, working 10 hours per day and 365 days, right? So 20 into 1 employee into 10 hours into 365, right? So that's 200 into 365. So this should come close to, I'm just rounding it off a bit here, so, but it should come close to around 75K, right? So it's almost half of what we have for ice cream parlor business. Now let me go to the rental cost, right? So you've given me that the rental cost for ice cream parlor business will be 3K monthly. So on an annualized basis, it will be 36K. For bookstore, it's 8K monthly. So on an annualized basis, it will be close to 12 size, around 96. Let me round it off, maybe close to 100K. Then from a utilities perspective, right? So in an ice cream parlor business, we will need more utility related cost because they will have refrigeration requirements. So let me assume maybe $1,000 a month is their utility cost. So on an annualized basis, that translates to $12,000, right? For bookstore, let me assume half of what we have assumed for ice cream parlor business. So that translates to $500 into 12 months, and that's $6,000, right? So just to summarize this, right? So for ice cream parlor business, we have labor cost to be 150K, the rent to be 36K, and the utilities to be 12K, right? If I add all this up and if I round it, it comes close to 200K, right? So my G&A cost for ice cream parlor business is 200K. Let me do the same summarization for bookstore business. My labor cost for bookstore business is around 75K. My rent is around 96K, and finally my utilities is around 6K. Right. So let me assume the total to be 175K. I'm rounding it a bit, but it should be close to 175K. Right. So 200K of G&A cost for ice cream parlor business, 175K G&A cost for bookstore business. Right. Now, if you allow me, I can apply this G&A cost to the gross margin calculations that we did to compute what will be the operating profit range, as well as what will be the payback period.
That makes a lot of sense. So given just the G&A costs that you just calculated, how does the profitability compare overall, the net profits compare for an ice cream parlor versus a bookstore?
Yeah, let me do that, Abby. So let me come back to the gross margin variance that I computed, right? So if you in the last step, right, or in the last calculation that I did for ice cream business, I calculated a gross margin variance plus or minus 25% variance of 270K to 450K, right? Now G&A cost we've computed it's around 200K, which means the profit range will be between 70K to 252K, right? Or 250K, let's assume that, right? So what I'm doing is I'm subtracting the G&A cost from the high end of the range and from the low end of the range, right? So, and I get a profit range of 70K to 250K, which means if I take the midpoint of this profit range, the profit could be around 160K, right? So 70K to 250K midpoint is around 160K. And our investment is 300K. So which means around in less than or in less than 2 years or close to 2 years, we would have recouped the investment cost of 300K, right? Let me do the same calculations for bookstore business, right? The gross margin variance that I calculated for bookstore business was 250K to 410K, right? I need to subtract this by the G&A cost of 175K. So if I do that, I get a profit range of 75K to 410 minus 175, it's around 235K, right? So 75K to 235K is my profit range for bookstore business. The midpoint of this will be close to 150K, right? I'm just rounding it off a bit here, but it should be close to 150K. Now with 150K of profit and with 300K of investment, it will take 2 years to recoup 300K, right? So what this means is that the payback period is quite similar for both businesses, right? So from a financial perspective, both businesses seem comparable. So I think now we'll have to really look at the non-financial considerations and which to determine which business is more suitable for Michelle.
That makes a lot of sense. I think before we move on to just some more non-financial considerations, we just got back some survey results and I have an exhibit to share with you about kind of the seasonality of revenue of the two businesses. Wondering if you can just look at this exhibit and tell me what you see and what this might mean for Michelle's business choice.
Sure, Abby. Yeah. So I can share some key takeaways from this particular exhibit, Abby. Based on this data that you have shared with me, and if I start with the ice cream parlor business, it seems to be a quite seasonal business. Sales increase significantly in summer and decrease in winter, right? And there are um, quite a few summer months over here. There are certain implications because of the seasonality. One, it will require more hiring of staff in the summer. Second, inventory and operations might need to adapt to this seasonal fluctuations. And Michelle might need to sacrifice her summer free time, to manage the business, right? So her operational workload will spike in the summer months, right? And she will need to manage the inventory very well during the summer months. That's the ice cream parlor business, right? With the bookstore business, also I see some seasonality, but it's limited to the holiday months of November, December. So in the holiday season, she will need to do more hiring. She will need to manage inventory and operations well during the November and December period. And of course, she will need to sacrifice a holiday time. So bookstore business, she needs to sacrifice the holiday time. In the case of ice cream parlor business, she needs to sacrifice summer free time, right? Now, there's another interesting implication related to the bookstore business, and that is because there is higher reliance on holiday sales. This could create a potential cash flow issues in the off season, right? And if there is any misstep related to inventory or related to operations, and if for any reason during the holiday season the bookstore is, let's say, not able to open, or they do not have enough inventory, their sales will suffer, right? Or they might face loss of business, right? So I think these are two key implications I see from the ice cream parlor business and the bookstore business based on this exhibit here, Abby. And from an investment decision perspective, right, I think there are two key aspects that Michelle will need to evaluate, right? One, which free time does she value more? I mean, does she want free time during holidays or does she want free time during summer? Right? That's one. Second, what is her risk tolerance? Because it seems that because in bookstore business, there is higher reliance on holiday sales, it could be more riskier.
Yes, that all makes sense, and great sort of analysis of that exhibit there. And even though this was a financial exhibit of sales, we got into some more non-financial metrics, and would love to kind of go deeper into the non-financial, aspects of the decision. Given that she values a business that's also enjoyable, and not overly stressful to run, how would you help her think about the two options using those lenses?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Abby. And if you can allow me some time to think through this particular question so that I can come back to you with a structured answer. Thank you.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So Abby, the way I have thought through this particular question is, if I look at which business is enjoyable to run, I think there are three key criteria to consider over here, right? So first is passion, right? Um, which business does Michelle have a natural affinity towards, right? And her background in literature suggests to me that I think she would have a natural affinity towards the bookstore business, right? Because in a bookstore business, she will be allowed to, let's say, curate book selections, host events, engage in meaningful conversations. So that's the first criteria, passion, right? The second criteria that I've identified is creativity. Um, in my view, I think bookstore will provide her more avenues for expressing her creativity. She can also control the customer experience, right from book selection to store layout, even thinking about different events to attracting customers. And now I'm saying bookstore business is more suited from a creativity perspective for her because of her background in management consulting, because she has been in an intellectually engaging profession earlier. I think she would want a creative outlet in terms of the business that she will run. And the third criteria I've identified is customer interaction, right? As I said during my structure articulation, running a bookstore business may offer deeper connections to customers, right? She will be able to foster and build a community if she runs a bookstore business. While if she runs an ice cream parlor business, her interactions will be limited. It's a fast-paced business. So, in my view, I think a bookstore business will help her develop more deeper connections in the community, right? So, from an enjoyable business to run perspective, I think bookstore business is more suitable due to passion, creativity, and customer interaction criteria. Now, let me look at the second non-financial objective that Michelle has articulated, which is less stress, right? And the way I have thought about less stress is in terms of workload and in terms of seasonality, right? By workload, what I mean is the operational demands of each business, right? Now, looking at the graph that you just showed me, my point of view would be the operational demands of an ice cream parlor business would be more stressful because she will need to manage inventory, staffing, peak times, etc. That doesn't mean that bookstore would not have operational challenges, but in my view, it will be potentially less intense than an ice cream parlor business because an ice cream parlor business might require more of her involvement in terms of each of these activities, that's inventory, staffing, etc. Right? And second criteria from a stress perspective, what I have is seasonality, right? Again, basing off the information in the exhibit that you showed me, both businesses have seasonality, right? However, the number of summer months are more, and the number of holiday seasons or holiday months are less, right? Again, I would not overly say that one business is better from a stress perspective than the other. I think both businesses would be equally stressful because of the seasonality of both these businesses, right? However, considering that bookstore business is is more aligned from her other aspects, that is from an enjoyment aspect, and I think from a workload aspect also, bookstore business will be less intense. I would suggest from a non-financial objectives perspective, bookstore business would be more suitable for Michelle.
That all makes a lot of sense and great framework there. So given, the financial metrics that we analyzed and the non-financials that we just discussed, what would be your final recommendation to Michelle?
Yeah, so let me just take maybe a moment to capture my thoughts, and I'll come back to you with my final recommendation. Thank you. Yeah, so Abby, I'm ready to deliver my recommendation. Based on the analysis that we have conducted, I would recommend that Michelle open a bookstore. Now, this conclusion is driven by three key factors that I've identified, right? The first factor being, I believe bookstore business will be more enjoyable, primarily because it's more aligned to Michelle's background and passion. She has a background in literature, which indicates a natural affinity towards the book industry. Second, the operational demands of managing a bookstore business would be lower, and therefore it would be less stressful than managing an ice cream parlor business. Why I say that also is because in an ice cream parlor business, what I understand is the inventory is perishable, right? And there are a lot of peak season fluctuations, right? So which could lead to higher stress levels if she were to manage a ice cream parlor business. And finally, from a financial performance perspective, both businesses are comparable. Now, our analysis revealed that both businesses offer similar financial prospects, roughly equal profit margins, similar payback periods. So therefore, this eliminates financial concerns as a decision-making criteria, right? So therefore, we can prioritize Michelle's non-financial objectives, which is look at a business which is more enjoyable and which is less stress to run. And that business, in my view, would be the bookshop business.
Great. Thank you so much for your recommendation. We will pass that along to Michelle. It was fantastic doing this case today with you. Really enjoyed the opportunity to do the case with you.
Thank you, Abby. I also enjoyed the opportunity to do a case with you. And this is a very interesting case that I did. And I'm glad I was able to think through some important criteria which go into a business or an investment evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, it's Kenton Kavesti here, the founder of Rocketblocks. Thank you so much for watching this mock interview video. I hope you found it informative and helpful as you are getting ready to prepare for your own interviews and hopefully landing that job offer you are excited about. We have a ton of great content on the Rocketblocks channel coming out on a weekly basis, mock interviews, mini lessons, and chats with our Rocketblocks experts. So if you haven't subscribed yet already, please do so. There is a big red button below. And if you hit that, you'll get all of our content as soon as it comes out. Thanks for watching and have a great day.